Gender-affirming interventions help transgender and non-binary people align their bodies with their gender identity. This includes hormone replacement therapy, surgeries, and psychological support. This morning, we have sexual and gender health doctor, Dr. Deano Reyes, to help us understand these procedures. It's a beautiful day, Doc Deano. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's good to see you again, Doc Deano, and we have an interesting conversation for our viewers this morning. First and foremost, Doc Deano, can you tell us what is hormone replacement therapy and how does it actually work?
All right, so hormone replacement therapy basically boils down to certain people are born into a gender they don't identify with. So even though their identity is like male or female, their body produces the hormones of what the gender they're born into is, right?
Okay.
So we need to be able to give them the hormones that matches their identity so that they will also physically change, right? So if you are born a male and then you identify as a female, we gotta give you estrogen basically, right? And if you are born a female and then you identify as a male, we gotta give you testosterone. So pretty simple actually when you boil it down like that.
But do these therapies, when you give it to them, do they have any side effects or drawbacks?
Of course, there are side effects with all types of medical intervention. So that's why supervision from a licensed medical professional is very important, right? So that we can minimize the risks. And our job really is to make sure that we keep them in physiological ranges to keep our patients safe. Right?
Now, I think it's interesting that you said under a supervision of a medical professional, because I think a lot of people here in the Philippines, because it's not accessible, they do it at home. Now, Doc, can you talk about the risks of that?
Yeah, most definitely. So when it's inaccessible in situations like in our country, a lot of people are forced to find ways that they can access this healthcare by themselves. So we call it DIY or do-it-yourself hormones. The problem is without the medical supervision, the dosages might not match your body. What I tell my patients is that every single person has a unique body, so the dose of somebody else might not be appropriate for you.
Right.
So I also tell my patients that the most important part of hormone replacement or gender-affirming hormone therapy is actually not the hormones, it's the monitoring part. Because that's the way that we can keep you safe, so we can see it a mile away if there's any risks, right, or dangers. And what are those usual risks? So for transgender women, we gotta look at their potential for VTE, that's venous thromboembolism, strokes in the young, heart attacks. Same for men when their blood thickens. So transgender men, we also check for how thick their blood is. Then of course, there's the mood swings and the potential other imbalances. So my job is to keep everybody safe and happy.
Right.
This is really important because here I notice, you know, when in certain communities, obviously, I have to be very careful about, you know, putting labels. However, it's prevalent. I mean, they buy it sometimes over the counter or, you know, in pharmacies that don't, you know, accept regulations or whatever. But before that, Doc, do you have to go to psychological therapy to say, hey, you know, I'm ready to get my mind and body, you know, in sync?
So, for your first point, it's kind of scary how accessible these things are out there, especially with the advent of online selling.
Yes.
You can buy anything online with like zero to no regulation, no prescription needed, right? So gender-affirming care has been a long process, even outside the country, in like the US where I trained for it. And before, there was a need for psychological clearance and stuff like that. But since even the specialty of psychiatry is very undermanned, there are very few psychiatrists all over the world, it placed too many boundaries or obstacles for the patients to get the care that they need easily. So now, people like me, gender-affirming care doctors, we don't necessarily need to have a psych clearance. We can assess them. We have tools to guide us. When do I do psych referrals? It's when I have patients who aren't set or it's not clear to them yet what their actual identity is. So we call it like flip-floppy under gender. They're not yet sure. So in those cases, you need a little bit more help, a little bit more guidance to be able to really help these people process and understand what they really need, what do they really want.
Yeah, but Doc, HRT is not only for, gender affirmation, right?
Yes.
Because, for example, it's also for those that actually need it. When you go older, right, you need to replace certain hormones.
This is
that we're not on that level, okay?
Well, Anne was talking about it actually earlier this morning.
I was talking with the Doc Deano about it and how I was comparing some symptoms that I feel with the symptoms that some of my friends are feeling, talking about perimenopause and everything. There is this, what do you call this? People kasi think na hormone replacement, it's just for the LGBTQ, right? And for men, and very rarely do women admit that they need hormone therapy. How do you address this problem, Doc Deano?
So in the history of medications like this is also kind of like a roller coaster because it's fairly new, right? But what we're finding out is that for men and women, their hormones are super integral to their overall health. It's not just about all the downstairs stuff, all the private stuff, right?
Yes.
There are testosterone and estrogen receptors in every single cell of your body, and it's important for your metabolism, for your aging, for your mood, right? So as you get older, you do lose these very integral hormones, and that's what we can also do. So apart from being a gender-affirming care doctor, a transgender health doctor, I do a lot of testosterone replacement for men who start needing it, and hormone replacement for women in their menopause, or even when they're younger and they have hormone imbalances. So it's all about just fixing this very, very crucial part of your life that people, especially here in the Philippines, don't know how important it is.
Right, because I'm really interested in doing it with my tender age of 35, just like you,
Yeah,
Anne.
same, Ferdy.
I mean, I'm really thinking about doing it. It really helps out with your metabolism, your energy, even hair growth.
My patients swear by it.
Right?
So drop by. Be happy to help you
So
guys.
for those interested, Doc, typically let's talk about how much it will cost to do HRT.
So on average, my patients spend about maybe 3,000 pesos for the labs. And then on average, maybe around 5,000 to 6,000 pesos will last you 10 weeks, more or less. It depends on how in-depthly you want to go inside, because really we can look at like things down to very micro levels and adjust and tweak it to really maximize your output. So I'm happy to adjust for my patients. I'm happy to work with people's budgets in mind. And we really just gauge it on how well and how happy you want to be and do our best to help you achieve it.
Doc Deano, are there a lot of doctors here in the Philippines with this specialty?
Really, unfortunately, it's an underserviced health sector, right? Which is why I'm super passionate about it, because a lot of Filipinos need this type of healthcare and they don't have easy access to it.
Yes. Doc, what's the pre and post care for HRT?
Really just some basic labs. We check your hormones, we check your blood, liver, kidney, your lipid profile, and we just make sure that all of those are within normal ranges.
How long does it take? Like, for example, I go to you today, you assess me, you assess my blood, and then typically
our first session usually involves me getting to know you, getting to know your goals, understanding what you want to happen, and then we do labs on the same day, probably get it by tomorrow, and then we can start then.
Okay, and then it lasts what? It's just a one-time thing, or
so
quarterly?
So HRT, testosterone replacement, hormone replacement, these are usually lifelong treatments, right? Because for non-gender confirming individuals, transgender individuals, when you take it out, they will snap back to how they were before. But for cisgendered individuals, really, we're treating a symptom of your body not creating enough of it anymore. So same, we are giving you something that you're lacking. So as long as we give it to you, you have enough.
What about pre and post operation care?
Yeah.
What do clients normally need after or pre?
So usually what we call it either top surgery or bottom surgery.
Yes.
Okay.
Top surgery, a lot easier, a lot more accessible. Bottom surgery, a lot more difficult. But what we do is we just tell our patients, you gotta pause your actual hormones, the hormone
This
intake.
is for SRS, right?
Yeah, SRS. But we call it now gender-affirming surgeries.
There you go. You see all the
yeah,
terms.
Yeah.
So,
we gotta know.
yeah, we need to take a little break from the hormones because the hormones can also affect your blood and your blood
Right,
vessels. But we usually just put those back once you've healed. And it usually just like a month, and then you're good to go. Yeah.
Now, what challenges, Doc, are you guys facing? Because this is such a specialized
Yeah.
field. So can you tell us what challenges you guys are facing moving forward, and what can we, as like a whole, maybe like the government, can also help and make it better?
So the way I got into this was because I had these influx of patients coming in asking for this type of healthcare, and it wasn't part of my training. It wasn't part of my training in med school or afterwards. So at first I said, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this, but I kind of felt I had this responsibility. So I told them, can you give me some time? I promise I'll learn, and then once I know, I'll help you guys. So I had to learn in WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, and that's where I picked up these skills, and then afterwards, that's when I was able to give it to my patients. So the problem is how inaccessible it is for even doctors to get this training locally, right? And that means since doctors don't have that skill or that knowledge, the patients don't have access for it. Even words and terms like transgender aren't built into our system or into our legal system. So it's a multi-layered problem, and we really have a little bit of work to do to get to a place that is inclusive and welcoming of people in the LGBTQ.
We're so serious, guys.
I
We're
know,
like intently listening.
But Doc Deano, let's talk about mental health care naman, supporting the mental health of your patients, because I'm sure some of your patients have gone through childhood emotional trauma, right? And some women, you know what, I read this article, let me just share, that, you know how women who are experiencing perimenopause and menopause explain that there's something going on in their heads, like their brains aren't functioning as well when they were younger. There was this doctor who showed like an MRI of the brain and showed the matter in the brain and how it changes as you age. Nag-iiba yung color. So there's this color, and she was explaining it. So it's true. There are changes happening in the brain talaga as you age, right? So it causes some emotional distress, I guess, depression, mood swings, and everything. So how do you support the mental health of your patients?
Okay, so for my transgender patients, really, minority trauma is a universal experience, right? So part of transitioning is not just the hormones or the physical or medical transitioning. We also guide and coach them through the social transitioning because that is a difficult process on its own. So we facilitate mental health counseling for them, which I can do as a gender-affirming doctor. We also do counseling with their family because it is a community thing. It's not just one person going through it. Especially parents or people from the older generation, they come from a different time, different words.
That's true.
So they do need a lot of support and help to understand what this is and why it's important for their kids and loved ones to go through it, right? So we do all of that together. And hormones, like I mentioned earlier, is involved with everything in your body, including mood, including, a lot of men are misdiagnosed as depressed and don't respond well to antidepressants or other medications like that. Turns out it's a hormone problem. Midlife crisis, when you actually match the
If you buy a sports car,
yeah.
you need hormone replacement.
Or a
Hormone
motorbike.
balance.
Yeah. But Doc, what about in the Philippines? Do gender affirming procedures have a space in our law, or is it regulated by the government, recognized by the government?
So right now, like I said, it's really not even in our laws. So you can't make rules on things that aren't even defined, right? So it's very loose. Even the hormones that we give, they are off-label uses to be able to help our patients, right? So don't worry, it's a problem all over the world. As a society, we're beginning to understand more of these nuances about gender, right? So every step forward is a good step. One step forward is like worth it. Right?
Yes. Doc Deano, how can we reach you if we have more questions about sexual health?
So you can reach me at my clinic. It's called HARA. It's a holistic gender and sexual health clinic where we can deal with anything related to gender and to sexual health. You can reach us on our website, haraclinic.ph, and you can find me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and X, right? So yeah,
There you
feel
go.
free to visit.
Doc,
Thank you
that was
so
such a
much.
great topic.
Thank you for your time. Sexual and gender health doctor, Doc Deano Reyes, ladies and gentlemen.